answer questions and stuff. So large wooden wrecks in Minnesota's lakes and rivers. Now these are just wrecks that Chris and I have found with Maritime Heritage Minnesota that we've located, except for 2 of them.
Yeah.
Except for 2 of them. But, well, 3 actually, if you count Essex. But yeah, I'm saying, but 2 of these have site numbers that we didn't give them, but we got Essex's site number.
Actually, Essex didn't have a site number.
Yeah, for years. And
yeah.
so anyway, these are ones we've worked on, and we have located ourselves all of these, but like 3. So moving on. Okay, again, this is MHM, including Kelly, who's here. He's right there in his dry suit, and his wife, Ann. Ann's here. Hi, Ann. These are a very small group. We only have a few volunteer divers who we trust, and our very small board of trustees, 3 people there, and Betty, who does volunteers for us from Ohio. And then, of course, the most important are Freddie and Rodney, who are right over here. So Freddie Mercury and Rodney McKay are very important, of course.
Yeah, this is basically how we do a survey. We'll run the perimeter of a lake with a sonar beam, shooting out about, depends, usually we do about 250 yards out on either side. It's feet actually, 250 feet on either side, but
depending.
Depending. We try to go north, south, or east, west, but sometimes wind and weather conditions dictate that we need to maybe head a slightly different direction into the wind or with it, just to get a good sonar picture, because otherwise we get tossed about and the sonar picture gets
wavy,
all blurry.
Well, and after we do a survey, we oftentimes go back and do targeted sonar, where we look at specific anomalies to answer questions about them before we dive them. Is it a rock? Is it a wreck? Is it, we don't know. So sometimes we want to get a better look. And Chris drives the boat and I play with the sonar. I often do a 200-foot beam, 100-foot beam. If the water's really shallow, but Chris keeps his transects these days. We're doing 100-foot transects on each side. So it's 200 total. And sometimes it's wider than that. Sometimes it's, it never goes less than 100, but sometimes the sonar itself widens out the picture as we get deeper, which is kind of nice.
It does it automatically depending on the depth. Right,
it overlaps. So, but we go back and get targeted scanning if we need it. The wrecks that we're talking about today are in Lake Minnetonka, of course, at the headwaters Mississippi River in Aitkin. And we didn't survey all of the river. The bit that we've surveyed with the boat is the red bit. That's just all of Aitkin County, 103 miles of meandering river.
At about 4 miles an hour.
And dodging rocks and trees and sandbars. And then also one wreck we're talking about is in Lake Superior up on Park Point in Duluth. Tom knows a lot about the Essex, Tom who's watching us. So we'll talk about that too. But we're starting off with the Wayzata Bay wreck.
Yeah, currently it's the oldest wreck in Lake Minnetonka. It sank 1879 on September 29th.
Today, it's anniversary. Woohoo!
We think it was built probably in 1876, and it belonged to a lumber company that James J. Hill was operating at the time. He was basically cutting up firewood for use in the cities. And I think maybe the locomotives
and on his trains,
on trains.
Yeah, he was deforesting the big woods. I mean, the big woods of Minnesota were being deforested just systematically by others, but mostly by James J. Hill. I mean, my hometown of Delano, he mentions going to Delano and getting wood, buying wood. He stayed in Delano for a week or something. And it's in his diaries. We've read those. So the wreck itself is a model barge.
Yeah, it's a type of barge that was very common on the Mississippi. You might even consider it the Cadillac of barges. Mm-hmm. It was sort of a high-end barge that you could take valuable cargo on. They were either flat-decked or they had deck houses built on top. And this one has almost all the characteristics of a model barge, and it's way more intact than any model barge that has survived in the archaeological record in the Mississippi River.
Yeah, well, actually, the whole United States. True, yeah, too. I mean, there's only 3, and this is one of them, and it's complete. So
essentially complete.
Yeah, it's great, fantastic. Some of these photos, by the way, are from video that Kelly shot, who's watching us, and of course our other volunteers, Josh and Ed and Mark.
It's 80 feet long.
Okay, why the use of models? Okay.
Oh,
it's not models; it's model barge.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, it had to do with The type, well, back in the day, they often made a model of the ship before you you took the lines off of that. To
Or a
make
half model.
A
Yeah.
half model, yeah.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, that was how these barges were initially made.
But how are they? How the name? They put the name to it because it's double ended, and you could honestly. Do we even know? I mean, we've looked this up. I mean,
yeah, maybe it was.
So built of a small off
Yeah,
a small
they'd
model.
make a half model, take the lines off of that, lay out those lines on a mold loft, full scale.
Yeah.
Build the frames off of that and whatever else, the shape of the stem and the
But
frames.
it's still a dumb name. I mean, double-ended, cargo barge or bulk carrier. They've been called that since
the sources we looked at never really
Civil War. Yeah.
They were speculative too as to why they got named that.
But your argument is the best one that we've seen, and I think it's a dumb name. I just do. But here's some more pictures. And actually, here's where we found out that she sunk on September 29th, 1879.
Yeah, you're doing word search.
We're doing word search, and actually, we found the wreck, and then we did the research, of course, and then we didn't find the wreck. Actually, divers have been diving on this wreck for decades.
This was a known. It's had a Clorox bottle tied to one of the wooden
sports divers have known about this wreck for decades. But they didn't know the importance of it because a model barge, like I said, this is and actually a riverboat that's in Lake Minnetonka. It shouldn't be there.
Well,
but someone who was familiar with riverboats and how river built this for Lake Minnetonka, and it said on the first screen, it might be from Rockford, which is near Delano. James J. Hill paid a guy in Rockford to build him a barge or two. We're not sure if it's this one, but it also could have come built in Carver, Minnesota, on the Minnesota River.
Probably, but maybe the designers or the builders came from those towns and they just built it on the lake.
Yeah, we're not. I don't think they trucked it in or trained it in. But anyway, so you see the model barges in these photos. That's right by James J. Hill's building. That building there is James J. Hill's
upper right
building in St. Paul on the Mississippi River. So he obviously was aware of what model barges did. So maybe he asked for one and then he used it on Lake Minnetonka.
Yeah.
So
it had 4 hatches on it, double planks.
Heavy
planks on the deck too, running both longitudinally and laterally.
Yeah.
And sometime in the past, somebody dumped some pipe and chain and
a propeller,
a 3-bladed propeller with one blade broken off
for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
maybe some divers wanted something to look at.
So there you go. And this wouldn't have a propeller, so yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, that's that. Oh, and we did nominate her to the National Register of Historic Places and was successful. So, and so now it's the type specimen of model barges. If anyone else wants to promote a model barge for the NRHP, they have to compare it to ours. So that's kind of neat. Essex, and Tom knows a lot about the Essex, of course, because in Duluth. And
last ship built by Donald Mackay's yard.
And it's Donald Mackay if you're really Scottish. I like Mackay.
Yeah.
And it's the last name of our cat. So here's various pictures of her over her lifetime, earlier lifetime. She was a naval vessel, obviously, built the last of the old wooden navy. She was steam with auxiliary sails. Literally the last group built out of wood.
It's more the other way around, sail with auxiliary steam.
Kind of. Well, that's what it became because she became a training ship rather early. She was active duty. She ran around the road 3 times.
Then in the early 1900s became part of the naval militia in Ohio.
Yeah, and that's as a training ship.
As a training ship, yeah. And was transferred to the Great Lakes. And I'm going to go to the next screen. Started out as a training vessel of the naval militia in Ohio. Then in 1910, got transformed into on the right-hand side.
The white pictures, the white painted.
The 2-masted, this time powered entirely by steam. Training vessel.
She was training the whole time. She was training actually in the 1890s, taking cadets to Europe and around different places. And the reason they did that is all the older ships, the Hartford and just several others, you can just Google it, became training vessels. And they were training, even on the Great Lakes, training sailors to know how to sail. If they ran out of coal, they could still get where they needed to go. And so she went from Toledo to Chicago for a couple years and then made it to Duluth in 1920. And she actually was working for about 3 years. They were gonna decommission her kind of quickly, and I know I'm gonna always say it wrong, Tom. The Paducah or Paducah. The Paducah took over, whatever the name of that ship was. Took over training, and then she became a barrack ship, like a lot of these old wooden boats did. And then she became useless to them, so they decided to take her to Park Point. And they
actually before that, became an accommodation.
That's what I meant, barracks. Yeah, barracks and storage. And then they didn't need her anymore, so they took her to Park Point in 1931, and they burned her to the waterline, which is both good and bad because at least part of her survives. You can see how she is in the surf there. She's not in the surf anymore. Either the water moved in or she moved out. She probably shifted. They're always doing. The Corps of Engineers is dredging out the inner harbor and putting
they tend to dump their
sand out there,
spoil over in that
so
area.
It could go over. We're not sure if she's moved. Lots of bits aren't there anymore, however.
Yeah, from that picture that was taken, I think in the late 80s.
88, yeah.
There's some pieces that are now gone from there. What exists is about 54 feet long. Yeah, we figure it was maybe around in the area of the engine or boiler room.
Yeah, and so the ice is damaging her sometimes. Her keelson's been chewed up a little bit. We've always wanted to get her out of the surf, but she is on the National Register of Historic Places. We didn't do that, but the state did earlier on with Scott Anfinson. It's more
back in the mid-90s.
So there's those concerns, but we do monitor her every year if we can get up there. Last year we didn't, but we pretty much try to get up there every year. And just want to point out this site plan, we did not do that site plan. The State Historic Preservation Office paid for that site plan. We had nothing to do with it. Although one of our board members, Steve Hack, worked on this project. And he's now a board member for MHM. So that's pretty cool. So
just one comment I wanted to make about the burning, because what they do, they pull it ashore, set fire to it. The upper works would burn down. As it burned away, it would become lighter because, it's gone, it's ash. It would raise up higher in the water. They'd rake out any metal that they could at that time, drag it closer to shore, and repeat the process until
we have what we have left. So, we were trying to preserve, or at least document her as she might become eroded by ice and damage and stuff. But so if these underwater pictures are really old and they were taken with a really crappy camera, but there you can see what she looks like.
Film camera.
Print, yeah, it's actually print film. So when the sand isn't covered, the sand moves a lot, and that is causing erosion. And then the Corps of Engineers, they never put stuff directly on her, but they'll put dredge spoil from the inner harbor on one side of her, and it'll drift over. And that's not actually too bad because it does preserve her to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But if we're coming to look at her, it's not so great because we can't find her, or she's under the silt.
This was kind of unique. We had to get the camera out for this. Was that on the what we're calling the port side, the sand had moved away enough so that we could actually see the outer hull planking.
Yeah, that's fine. Right down here. Yeah. And these pictures are awful. And next time we've got better cameras now, so hopefully next time we go up there, we'll actually be able to see her better. And what we've done, we received a legacy amendment grant to go to the National Archives and the U.S. Naval Academy to digitize the 62 known logbooks of the Essex. It took me 2 weeks to digitize 22,500 pages. They are all now edited, and they are all online. We finished earlier this year, actually. A personal donation from Dr. Natalie Rosen helped pay for the last push, the last 19 of them. And so these are just samples of some of the pages. We had typed, handwritten this way, so all different directions. And they're all online that people can access. And that's how many there were. So these are all online through the Internet Archive and linked from our website. And Chris also that year went to do research at the National Archives and in Chicago to do background research for some work we're doing on the Essex. So we got 2 grants that summer for Essex work. But it took us 10 years to get these blog books finally all done, and they're done. So finally. Okay, moving on to the Headwaters Mississippi River.
Yeah, this is the Andy Gibson. In between 1870 and 1920, there were around a dozen steamboats that operated at one time or another between Grand Rapids and Aiken. And this was the largest one at 130.
Well, she's 140 feet at her
44,
biggest. She got lengthened, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Way too big.
Yeah,
Way too big.
even got written up in an annual congressional report by the Corps of Engineers as being responsible for unwanted riverbank erosion.
She's, and her paddle wheel was too forceful.
Yeah, operated between 1884 and
1894. Yeah.
And
then was abandoned at where her mooring place was, and just let it sit to rot, basically.
Yeah, but I think they never really planned to totally abandon it.
No, they were going to,
because they built a platform. Because what would happen in low water is that steamboats, if they didn't have this platform to land on, it would tilt over. And in that historic photograph, you can see there's a barge or something behind the Gibson that's, you know, tilted over like that, and that would often cause a boat to sink if it wasn't.
And break her back too.
It could also cause other damage. So they built this platform.
It's a cradle, really, of sorts.
Yeah. And but never brought her back into service. The boilers went off to heat a building in Aiken, and the engines, I think, went to a steamer that was operating on Lake Winnebagosh.
So she sat here and rotted. Over the decades, people commented on her. She became embedded into the riverbank. You know, the riverbank moves.
Starboard side became embedded.
Yeah.
She kind of collapsed around the cradle, and that seemed to actually help a little bit in keeping the boat hull remains in place.
Yeah,
there.
The cradle was punching through, actually, the bits and pieces. Like you see, looks like a piling sticking up there. That's actually part of the cradle. It's not part of the boat.
Or the platform that it sat on.
And this is actually the first wreck that Kelly worked on
really?
Worked with us on. Yeah. So some of this is his stuff. So the site plan we've got here, it's not complete, obviously. We could dig out that whole starboard side if we needed to.
There's a big section of midships that's missing from souvenir hunters, basically.
Yeah, they actually took a chainsaw
but
to it.
You can also see the rods towards the stern on the left side of the pictures. Some of them on the riverside part have fallen over, and the ones on the shoreline side are sticking up out of the mud. They're the bolts that held the steam engines in place.
But you'll see the two pictures of Chris and I. When the water's a little higher, you see me hanging off the river. You know, we have sandbags literally hanging almost into the water, and Chris is actually standing in the river. When the water's low, it's a dry nautical site. I mean, we just do work like we would. We still need to get back up there and video that bit that's not on here.
There's a little bit in the forward half and part of the stern half that we need to get better documentation.
And I'd still like to do back down on the starboard quarter, dig into the riverbank. I'd like to do the whole riverbank. We might not have to do that though, because that might damage the
One of the things we found that was really interesting is that on the riverbank, what's embedded is intact up to the main deck level.
And you'll see that right where by Chris's head there.
Yeah. And that and then there's actually, in some instances, deck planking intact.
And that's deck planking,
Yeah, that is something you normally don't find on Mississippi riverboat wrecks. They're usually totally eroded away down to the frame, to the keels.
And it's collapsed. I mean, it's not straight up like this, like, oh, here's a boat. It's collapsed, but it's intact.
Yeah.
So all the bits and pieces there, it's fantastic. I mean, we didn't expect this at all.
No.
So. And here's some more pictures of her. You can see the cradle here and here and here. You can see the cradle punching through, and bits and pieces that have been all three rudders have been taken off. The first two in the 1960s, because the local museum was going to preserve them, and they got thrown in the weeds and forgotten about. And the last one was only taken off in the 2000s to preserve it, which it's a man. Yeah. Just took a dredge to it.
It was kind of good intentions, but it was not the right thing.
It was breaking federal and state law.
Yeah, it's currently being preserved in Aiken, which at least it has that much.
Yeah, it's been preserved. So anyway, you can see it's low water. You can see her. She's right there.
River is low. We might want to make a run up there.
Oh, well, river is low this year. Good point. Yeah, we might want to. Kelly, get your scuba gear. Because thank you for telling us that, Tom. Well, yeah, because it's low down here too. Is it Artie? Oh, it's Artie. I'm sorry. I said Tom did that. Well, it's low here, so it should be low there. So we might zip up there for a day. So there she is. And dry suit. Yeah, no kidding, Kelly. Dry suit. It's a little nippy. Okay, so there's that. And we'll move on to the Red Mill wreck, which is also down the river.
About a mile or so upriver, we're looking for the wreck of the Walter Taylor. And that was supposed to be abandoned in this area. And we found this wreck. The upper left-hand corner is what was sticking out of the riverbank, and we
during low water. It's the original
yeah.
picture where I go. Well, this looks like something. It didn't show up on our sonar survey at all as anything significant because it's mostly buried. Yeah. So,
but we've started digging around it and found frames and bottom planking and a little bit of deck planking to the left there. That little L-shaped excavation trench is what we're calling the bow, or at least an end of the wreck.
It's the end of a wreck, yeah. So there's still more work obviously to be done to really identify this as a Wanigan, which it would, if it is a Wanigan, it's the only Wanigan that we know of in the state.
That's what these historic photographs show are basically support barges for lumber drives.
Yeah, and the Walter Taylor, if she is there, and she probably is, there is a big pile of bricks further down that might be part of her boiler
maybe part of the
or firebox, and that might be where she is. But that's a bigger excavation than we've done with Red Mill wreck so far. So if she is there, plus the Red Mill, plus Andy Gibson, plus the Swan, there's 4 Mississippi River boats within a 2-mile group, and three of them within 300 feet of each other. Yeah. We did not do. We've only done Swan where we've gotten in the water and looked at it.
The conditions, since this map was made back in the mid '90s.
The Chapeau, again, the State Historic Preservation Office.
They did a survey of potential wreck sites in Minnesota, and they documented 3, and this being
one of them. And so we haven't done a whole lot, except for we can tell when people have picked up pieces of her and thrown them aside for no reason whatsoever, and it has happened. So whenever that does happen, we do a site form update, and we retell the state that. But it's really hard for us to do anything with this wreck because of her position. So
it's been pretty well destroyed.
And at the mouth of the Ripple River too. The other rivers
supposedly burned at its moorings. Back in the day.
Yeah, 1898. So, but it's a neat wreck if it hopefully doesn't get too destroyed. Yeah. So, now we're back in Lake Minnetonka because we're doing these chronologically. Saucy Kate wreck, as Kelly will tell you, it's very dark, and we lucked out one day a couple of years back.
Great visibility.
Wow! I mean, you can actually see something. And so the guys got us some good pictures. She was one of the most well-known boats on Lake Minnetonka
because she was steamers.
Yeah, 1876, and she was on the lake until 1899. She was built as the Kate. She sank a few days after she was launched, or very soon after she was launched. They did raise her. They got a crew in there and actually raised her from about 70 feet of water. And then they rebuilt a bit of her and changed her name to Saucy Kate. And then she was the oldest boat on the lake for quite a while.
Then was 1899.
She burned in 1870.
Caught fire again.
Yeah. 1899.
Yeah, at the end of her life. And right next to the dock, sank. They raised her and then just towed her out and scuttled her again.
Into a 50-foot hole.
Yeah.
Her whereabouts were by Gale Island, and she's not by Gale Island. We looked for her there.
This is another one that local divers apparently knew about, but didn't really dive on that often because I think the visibility tended to be bad.
Yeah, although we do know one diver who took the toilet off of her for no reason, just threw it and sitting around in a yard for a while. But anyway, some more pictures of her, and
you can see some of the charring on the upper left photo there.
Yeah. It's a great wreck. She's really, you get the right light and you get some bright lights. The water clarity is fantastic. And the picture, you can see her with other boats. I put this one in there because she's the one fully facing us, that you can actually see her with other boats coming in. And this is Wayzata. This is them coming into Wayzata dock. So that's just Saucy Kate, and we're so glad she's a very famous boat. They actually made her the Excelsior Sesquicentennial mascot, kind of, with Saucy Kate. So, and then we went and found her some several years later, or identified her anyway. Half-deck barge wreck. We located this wreck 2 years ago, and this is what good sonar can do, because our first sonars that we did in 2012, we sonared this area, and this wreck looked like a rock. Like a big rock. And the new sonar, and actually our friend Mike Brill, who's a fisherman, if he sees something weird on his sonar, he'll email us a picture of it. And we're like, okay, that might be a tree. But then we went and sonared it, and we got this sonar picture, and obviously that's a barge. So she's a heavy built thing, just
and
incredibly heavy.
On the side view on the lower left picture there, had a very pronounced pintle. Or actually, that's a gudgeon.
The gudgeon, the gudgeon.
Yeah, off to the left there. And
so there's a rudder involved here, and so the theory could be that she had been a sailing vessel at one point, or they used the rudder to help maneuver her. We don't know. We can't answer that question. But she does have a gudgeon where you could put a rudder, and you'd think it would be on both ends because she's pointy. And she's not a model barge, though. She's not considered a model barge because of how she's built, but she's pointy on both ends too. So
having a slight shear kind of takes it out of the model barge category.
And the fact that she's not the way she's decked too. Double decking is a model barge attribute.
This is a single plank.
Yeah, but she's a great wreck and just fantastic. The visibility can be really bad. The one time I dove on her, I didn't see her. I was holding a light. I didn't see her, but we were lucky we get some good pictures and good video. Open barge wreck, also over in Upper Lake. We located her last year. And again, better sonar, because the old sonar, she was just this weird little blip off to the starboard side of the boat. But with our better sonar, I picked her out immediately. And it could have been a dock, though. We weren't sure until we dove on her, but a wonderful, at least one end is raked barge. Barges with raked ends are, very typical. She's lightly built, so probably didn't carry too heavy of things. Whether she had a deck or not, don't know yet. We would need to uncover her other side, and that might happen sometime in the future. But just an old barge, and it's great to find these older barges and these big wrecks after all these years of us looking.
Workboats like that tend to fall through the historical record because they're kind of
blah.
Yeah.
Because they're blah. And
they're everyday objects that people don't think twice about.
Yeah, and we're up to 86 wrecks in Lake Minnetonka, and all but 6 of them are ones that we've identified. Of course, sometimes other scuba divers have actually dove on them, but that we've identified and told the state about and that. So to find this kind of thing is great. These workboats are just fantastic, just like the other barges we found. And Theta, another surprise. Mike Brill, our fisherman friend, can be thanked for this one because wow.
We did pick it up originally, but it was this little dot that
looked like a rock. Yeah.
And went over it again with the newer sonar and got
great sonar pictures.
Very good image.
And her name, and actually she had full of zebra mussels, and the guys came up and said, she's got a name. Her name's Theta. How often do you find that?
One of those turn of the century 2-cycle single cylinder engines.
Yeah. And it obviously wasn't sunk on purpose because her engine's still there. All of her fittings are still there. Her name is still there. Her name has since been caught by something, either an anchor or a fish line. It's bent up like this. I didn't put that picture up here because it's depressing. We may bend it back next year. We got to write up a research proposal for the Office of the State Archaeologist justifying why we want to do that. Otherwise, it might be left bent up. We have to figure that out. It's up to OSA. If they say no, they say no.
Still has white paint underneath it.
Yeah, so she's painted white. And what's bad about this wreck is she's a great wreck, but we have found nothing about her in the historical record. Not one word about a gas launch or because it is a gas launch. It's not naphtha.
It's early 2-cycle engines.
So it's not a steamer. But no, not one word. Now, when in newspapers, they'd sometimes say, Mr. Smith went out in his gas launch with a party of 10. Now, with those references, we may have come across those, and one of those may be Theta. How long is Theta? Yeah, isn't she 23 feet? She's 23, 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, 24 feet, yeah. So she's over 20, because that's what our where we go large wreck versus small wreck, our cutoff point is 20 feet. Anything above 20 feet is considered large. That's what we just arbitrarily pick that.
Yeah, one thing I found out too about a possible date for this wreck is that the engine has oilers on it.
Mm-hmm.
And
you can see them right there.
You can see one of them. And those weren't introduced on these engines until 1909. I think that was right.
1905, I thought.
I think it was 9.
It's early. It's before 1910.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it wasn't. It could be a second engine. It could be
Well,
replaced motor.
that-
We just don't know.
That, and also that's, to qualify that, that's the first time that mixing oil with gasoline was first mentioned. So
Yeah, right. So it could have happened
It might
before
have been
that.
in use for some time before.
Because I'm thinking she could have been built in the 1890s from the design of the hull. There's no doubt about that. What her power plant was, she might have been a steamer converted to gasoline later. We can't answer that question. But we'd love if people have, you know, photographs at home of Theta in their, you know, attic or something, because we know nothing about her besides what her, you know, what she is. We don't know who owned her or anything, nothing at all. Okay, George Excelsior. This is one of those that the state looked at, and people have been, you know, scuba divers have been diving for decades. They assumed it was the Excelsior. She started her life as George. She ended her life as Excelsior.
Started life, served for a year as the George, and we don't have a picture of her at that point, but it's pretty
Ugliest boat.
Yeah, basically the pilot house, if you look at the historic photo in the upper center there, the pilot house was put amidships.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And it just kind of looked like a cardboard box with the pilot house and 2 smokestacks.
Yeah, it's ugly.
That lasted a year. They took her back, rebuilt her, and to that configuration you can see now, and operated until 1909.
Until August 12th. And then you obviously, they burned her as a spectacle. You can see the burned and charred bits. Some of this is Kelly's stuff. So they burned her as a spectacle. Thousands of people would come out in boats and watch this happening.
Roman holiday.
Fun, woohoo, yeah. And this is not the only one that this has happened to. But in doing this, she's, you know, burned to the, not even to the water line, this part. I mean, she sank relatively quickly.
Yeah. The main
there's
deck
decking all over the place.
Is intact in a lot of places, and also the flagpole at the bow is still there.
Still standing. So for us, that's fantastic. Burning her did her a favor because it sank her almost intact.
Yeah, and this is another case of a Mississippi River boat transplanted.
Yeah, the design anyway.
Design transplanted to the lakes.
So
in the lower left there, you can see pictures of those rods standing up. Those are also engine mount rods that held the steam cylinder.
Just like we have on Andy Gibson.
Yep.
So, yeah. Okay. All right. Now we're on to a streetcar boat. We've got a few of those. Everyone knows the Minnehaha was raised from the bottom of the lake in 1980 illegally. That's all we're going to say. But 3 more are still down there, and here's one of them, the White Bear. The White Bear was documented by the state for that survey that they did, and that site number 21HE281 was given by that group of researchers, not by us. So she's the only Lake Minnetonka wreck that had a site number before we started our work. So,
and it was actually interesting because they made a pretty good site map. We were able to compare notes with what we found today, and actually found a little bit of decay and or damage. One of the railings, if you see on the center left picture there, the railing that would go off to the left there, that used to be intact, and that's now has rolled off and is lying in the mud alongside.
Yeah. And how that happened, it got old and fell, or an anchor hit it. We don't know. And that is Kelly, by the way. It's diving right there. That's him, it's him with his camera. And so it's in pretty good shape. The superstructure's gone. They ripped the superstructure off these boats to get to the engine and the boiler, because those are things you want to get. They recycled the seats and various and sundry things, but obviously they kept some of the cleats on board and various things like that. So it does have a lot of neat attributes still on board. Then there's the Como, her sister, and just to go back, they sunk 4 streetcar boats, 3 in the 1920s, 1 in 1949. The Minnehaha was raised in 1980. The other streetcar boats, the Harriet, the Stillwater, and the Excelsior, were torn apart. We have records of that happening in the mid-1920s, torn apart and dismantled, so they don't exist anymore.
Actually, Excelsior was a 7th boat that was built shortly after the others, but
the 6th and then the 7th.
Kind of a half sister.
Yeah. So what I would like about the Como, or you can see that they sunk her with detritus from the Big Island Amusement Park. Those bricks are from Big Island. And to help sink her and they weren't that heavy. I don't know why they thought this would help that much.
It was just part of a general cleaning up and getting rid of debris.
Yeah, I guess, because they're hollow, and if they don't have a lot of even with concrete in them, they weren't that heavy. So anyway, the Como.
You can actually, and we don't have a good picture of it, but you can make out the name on the starboard
Yeah,
side.
I looked at that picture. I couldn't see it very well, so I didn't put it in here. It's difficult. It would be hard to see. So this one was disturbed when the Minnehaha was being restored. Her propeller was taken off by looters and then it ended up on the Minnehaha. So the Minnehaha currently is using the Como's propeller. It was illegally done. If they'd asked the state to do it legally, the state probably would have said yes. So we're not really keen on what happened, of course, because it was looted. But and what damage did they do getting to that propeller? So who knows? That's not good. And Hopkins Minnetonka, this is the streetcar boat that was Hopkins at first. Then she was sold to a private individual. She became Minnetonka for her last 20 years.
Twin Cities Rapid Transit Company discontinued service in 1926. The Hopkins was eventually sold to Captain Hopkins.
Yeah, and then he sold it to somebody else in its final days. Or is his son-in-law, I think they actually got to.
He converted it to gasoline power at one point and operated it until the 1940s.
Yeah, until 1949. And she's got a lot of her superstructure still intact, which is great. I mean, well, a lot. I say some. There's a little framework there. And her toilets are still there, both toilets. And someone put a power tool in one of the toilets.
People like to.
And there's a
if that isn't interesting enough.
And there's also, it's the picture right there is a dry suit. So like I don't know if they're trying to make
dry suit down there and inflated it so it's to scare people.
Like it's some sort of Halloween thing.
But it still has its smokestack and some of the superstructures.
Okay, Lois says, by streetcar, do you mean it linked yes, unlinked to the streetcar. The Twin City Rapid Transit Company streetcar line were yellow with red trim, and when the streetcar line got out to Lake Minnetonka, you then to get off the streetcar and get on a streetcar boat. They just look like the streetcars. I mean, they're obviously boats and they're steam powered.
And the window frames basically were the same type of frames that you find on the streetcars of the day.
And the wicker seats and all that. So they're basically emulating a streetcar from the Twin City Rapid Transit Company, but on the water. Exactly. So that the streetcars also went up to Wildwood Amusement Park on White Bear Lake, but White Bear Lake did not build a fleet of streetcar boats. They had other boats that went around the lake, but they didn't do this. Only Lake Minnetonka did this. So you could call it. They also called them express boats because they consider them fast at 12 miles an hour. Yeah. That's pretty fast. So, but I like streetcar boats is more descriptive. So we usually just call them a streetcar boat, and that's what they're streetcar boats or express boats. Running on steam. Good question.
This was a surprise.
Priscilla. We didn't expect to find Priscilla on the bottom of the lake. No one knew she was there. And we had in
the historical record, we found a picture taken, I think in the 1950s.
Yeah, 1950s.
Yeah, that showed her. And no indication of what happened to her afterwards. Apparently they took her out, stripped her, and scuttled.
And she was a tugboat that was built by John R. Johnson. That's the gentleman with the mustachio. He built a lot of Lake Minnetonka boats. He captained some. He owned some. I know he engineered the Spirit of the City of St. Louis.
He started out, engineering, also eventually rose to captain of some of the excursion boats, like the Bella Minnetonka and the City of St. Louis.
And that's the mid 1870s. So he was out there pretty early doing this. He's an immigrant from Norway. But then he started building boats, and he also had a dredging company, and he used the tug Priscilla in his dredging works. And this boat was on the water from 1906 till after 1939. We know that for sure. We have photographs. But his grandson, Anson Mace, there's pictures of him on this boat with his kids. So this boat lasted for decades and decades and decades. So when we actually found her by sonar, and then the Hennepin County Sheriff's Water Patrol wanted to practice with their new ROV, so they asked for some targets, and we gave them this one because we were interested in see what she looked like. And the moment they sent us back some footage, we went, well, that's the Priscilla. I mean, it was very obvious.
The towing post at the stern and at the bow.
It all matches. Is just great that we found this. And one thing about her, she does have a Danforth anchor wedged into her side. So
this might have been found.
Somebody found her,
and maybe dived on in the 50s and 60s by some of the early scuba divers.
But no one lately.
Nobody really made note of the location, or if they did, they died.
Yeah. So then the Minneapolis, again, John R. Johnson built the Minneapolis, the St. Paul, and the Minnetonka, all three ferry boats built by Twin City Rapid Transit, or for them by John R. Johnson.
Yeah, they were built to service the Big Island Amusement Park.
And they're double-ended. They go back and forth, back and forth. And that's a rudimentary
Yeah.
site map, obviously, because the wreck itself is a mess.
It would take a bit to map accurately.
So burned again as a spectacle, just like
Yep.
Excelsior
It
was.
started out 109 feet long, and then after 1 year, they decided it was sitting too low in the water, rebuilt it to 149 feet.
Yeah,
And
it's a big boat. And then they decided 1912, after the amusement park was closed. And you see the two of them, the sisters, are actually at Big Island moored and abandoned to a certain extent.
As they're laid up.
Yeah, just laid up. Yeah. So
So then in 1912, they decided to have another burning spectacle.
And so here's a bunch of sonar. She's the weirdest thing to sonar, because no matter what direction you come from, she looks different. And so we went around. That's the most sonar wreck in Lake Minnetonka. We all over the place. We've gone around.
And some of those passes, like the one in the center top, and the one to the right of that, you can see one of the paddle wheels sitting slightly off to one side there.
Yeah, it came off. And you see that up in the water column, there's something white there. That is a buoy that scuba divers put on her to find her. It
goes up to within about 6 feet of the surface.
Yeah, really shallow of the surface. Yeah, and so it would be easier for them to find her to scuba dive her. She does get down to 80 feet in one spot. A lot of it mostly 72, 75. But so it's not a fun wreck to dive.
It's kind of got a reputation of being a wreck that you don't want to dive on in low visibility, because there's a lot of places to get hung up on.
So what we had, Kelly, our volunteer who's here, he talked to a local company, Digilabs, and one of their employees, Nick Notham, he designs sonar units and augments ROVs and navigation units systems for ROVs and other ways of doing sonar. And so he's actually done he took us out on the pontoon, and this is his work.
Wanted to do some work on tweaking his systems. And
so we get the benefit of him working on his stuff by getting this great footage.
What's great about that is we were able to spend about 3 hours just going back and forth over this. Whereas if we had to do this on scuba, we probably couldn't do more than a couple of dives of 30 minutes, if that, because of the depth. Yeah, because you have to do some decompression, make sure. So, but you see, the light actually made it down that day. This is exceedingly good visibility. We lucked out so much with this visibility. So we got 3 hours of footage, and we took some screen caps. And here's where she broke. Yeah, she snapped. Broke in 3 places. Yeah. It's, from what we can tell from the condition of the wreck, we're calling it the stern half.
Because she's double-ended, but there is a definite bow stern thing.
Yeah, the engine was amidships. The boiler is usually, on boats, boilers are towards the bow. So we're calling the part that burned to the waterline the stern, and the other part that's more intact the bow.
Yeah.
Anyway, stern pretty much almost burned entirely away before she sank, as far as we can tell.
Yeah.
And when it sank, it went down bow first. Bow rammed into the silt, broke about 20 feet after the stem, jackknifed, then broke a second time, and also twisted a bit. So
it's a true wreck.
It's really a jigsaw.
And that's why the sonar looks so weird too, because it doesn't look like a boat. It's a pile of debris, which is technically what she is, really.
And the picture you see on the left there, that's part of the bow with the sponson that has the dive line going off of it. Yeah. Next to that's going to the midship section, and then lower right is the brake, first brake, and the lower left is looking down further from that first brake.
Second brake. So,
actually, that's first.
Yeah. So it's sandwiched, and so we got the paddle wheels are both still there. That wasn't known before Nick helped us with this with RV.
Well, we knew that there was one paddle wheel, and other divers had run a guideline off the sponson part of the wreck to one of the paddle wheels.
Right, but not the one that's still attached to the boat.
We were going back and forth, and we kind of thought, that looks familiar.
That looks like a paddle wheel,
sticking out from what's underneath what we think is the starboard side of the wreck. That fell out. You can see on the upper left, in the background there, those are deck beams that are standing up. Those would normally be horizontal, but because the wreck side's fallen over, they're vertical.
It's laying on its side. And then the bottom pictures are the paddle wheel that's off the wreck, that it fell off during the wrecking process. So it's really great to have both of these things, one in place and one not in place.
I missed a question there from Lois. What's the small picture?
Oh, was it on the previous? Oh, I think that she's talking about the buoy. It was really hairy.
Oh,
That's the
yeah.
buoy that is filled with scudge. Is
Yeah,
it plastic? Is it
that's the
plastic?
marking buoy that divers put in
Divers put on
that
it.
comes within 6 feet of the surface.
Yeah, we didn't do that.
Yeah.
The divers years ago put that on there. Yeah, it's the one thing that's all hairy. That's just it's the diver's buoy, or And I'd like to take it off, and we maybe will sometime. But so that's what that was. And this is just all paddle wheels. Okay.
Yeah, more of the wreck.
How solid this thing still is, where it didn't burn, is just amazing.
Upper left is more of the sponson.
Underneath the sponson.
Lower left's part of the bottom planking that's or bottom part of the hull that's landed upright or twisted upright.
Yeah.
Then we got turn of the bilge photos.
Yeah, actually, the turn of the bilge, it's just fantastic since it's on the side, on that one side. So
you can actually see, where the planking is missing on the upper right picture.
Yeah.
They got two frames that are butting up against each other, and what's called a cocked hat. A little
stupid name. Yeah, because Andy Gibson has cocked hats. Yeah.
Riverboat terminology is its own thing.
It's weird.
So that's a little reinforcing piece that runs between. You can see it's got charred a bit before it sank.
But just a solid boat. There's so much of this that didn't burn is just in fantastic shape, preserved by the cold water of Lake Minnetonka. And this is various and sundry metal bits and pieces, and and
hogging chains,
and you see the burnt bits too, though. Those pieces burned. You can still see the fastener sticking through there. A sieve, water intake.
Water intake from the boilers.
For the boilers.
And on the bottom left there is the smokestack.
The smokestack's on its side. It was still left on board. It wasn't taken off. So a lot of metal. So it's metal, wood. It's just a incredible wreck of just different. I mean, everything you want to find for a wreck is on this wreck. It's fantastic. The paddle wheel survival is just amazing.
That was a bit surprising.
Just fantastic. So, but turnbuckles and everything you got there. Okay, then from the most detailed wreck in the lake to this.
Yeah.
Where we don't know much about it except that it's a wooden boat that flipped over. That's all we know.
It's got slot-headed screw fasteners, which dates it to the mid-1930s.
Yeah, pre-30s. So I think actually it could be 1880s even from the design. So
yeah, it's about 26 feet long. Most of it's buried. The stern area is in the silt, and the fact that it must have landed stern first, buried itself, and then flipped onto its top. Wondering if maybe this could be a naphtha launch.
We wish.
One of the really early versions, a steam engine that used gasoline instead of water. You boiled gasoline to operate the steam engine.
Many of them blew up.
Well,
and burned people. They did.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
That was an early gasoline engine. They were considered gasoline engines, and because they weren't technically steam, you didn't have to have a licensed steam engineer to operate it.
So it was cheaper. It was cheaper to run. You didn't have to have another person to do it. But we don't know. We need to pick this up and flip her over, and we're not going to be doing that, obviously. So she's got one heck of a strong keel.
This is 70 feet down, and
Yeah, 72 feet, and flipping it would destroy her. I mean, you'd have to, the excavation involved here, millions. I mean, very expensive, very expensive. But anyway, she's just she's got what I like is the repair. There's a repair down on her bottom. So this boat saw some action for several years. That they actually fixed her and kept her going. So, but we don't know. We have no story about her at all. Hercules, one of the most.
Yeah, this was kind of a support vessel for the Twin Cities Rapid Transit Company. Didn't have a very long life. For some reason, it was not considered successful. I think it was underpowered, but it was scuttled along with some of the other streetcar boats back in 1926.
After she was just painted. I mean, virtually her name painted anyway. So, which still survives, which is fantastic. I mean, you can't, that's Kelly's picture actually. So the bollards are still there. She's got hatches. She's just this is one of the favored wreck sites for divers in the winter to go down on. She's relatively shallow, about 45 feet. So easy to get to, easy to find. People, go out and drill a hole in the ice. I'm not doing that, but our volunteer Ed has dove on her a couple of times. Not me. But she's great scuba diving for as long as they don't hurt her.
One of the original 6 wrecks that were known in Lake Minnetonka.
Right. Her and the White Bear and the others.
And the Excelsior and the Minneapolis and streetcar boats. Then we came and upped that to 86.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's the Hercules. Oh, these were a surprise. The hopper barges.
Yeah.
human error.
Well,
it's first.
okay, we knew, well,
We were in a turn. We were in a turn on a survey.
Initially, it brushed off the image we had of the barge
because it got smeared
on the left.
Yeah.
Then we went back to look at it again and thought, oh, that's a really good image. And while we were Googling at that, we came across this other image that was actually in the area that was an intersection of 3 search areas.
For 3 different days, too, of sonar work.
We just happened to miss this small area.
40 feet.
Yeah. And there was this other, what turned out to be the sister barge to this other hopper barge.
So yeah, always go back and look again. So yeah, we missed it. It was total, just not, we didn't cross our streams, we call it. It's like Ghostbusters, didn't cross the streams. So when we came across that one, it looked like a bus. I'm like, holy cow! I mean, the overturned one, and then the other one. So this is perfect. This is a holy grail for us, because you've got 2 boats that are sisters, they're identical, one up and one down. You can see exactly how they're constructed. I mean, actually, again, by John R. Johnson, too.
These were used in the construction of the Excelsior Amusement Park.
And the dredging of the bay.
Some historic photographs you see of them.
That's actually, those are the same wreck. That's our wrecks right there.
And when we dove on the upright one first, and we were kind of puzzled by these weird straps along the side of the boat, wondering what the heck they were. And when we dove on the upside down one, we realized that those were actually flaps that were the dumping chutes for the spoil that would be loaded in the barge.
They can't, instead of dumping from an end like the barges do, or even the bottom, these dump from the side. That's a hopper barge.
Yeah.
And this would have been a bulk carrier of mud, basically mud and rocks, gravel, from when they were dredging out Excelsior Bay for the amusement park. That was there beginning in 1924 to 1974. And so hopper barges are not common at all. You don't find them around much.
At least ones that have survived from this era.
Yeah, you just don't. So these are very rare, and they're exciting that John R. Johnson designed a hopper barge to be working on Lake Minnetonka. I haven't found any wrecks of hopper barges anywhere, and I found a couple that are working on in the ocean or whatever, but there's a big metal, in shallow water barges.
Sometimes they have these weird clamshell things that open along the middle of the boat.
Right, yeah, but it's just fantastic. So holy grail for us right there. You couldn't ask for anything better for an underwater archaeologist.
Or can you?
Well, we could, but anyway. And look, John R. Johnson again. He built this one too.
He figures a lot in the archaeological record.
And don't you love that sonar? I mean, this is our new sonar, and our old sonar gave us a great picture, though.
Good picture, but this is better.
Even better. It's almost like a snapshot of this wreck, and this has been a popular wreck with sport divers over the decades. So she's well known.
We asked one of our local informants if he knew anything about this barge in St. Albans Bay, and he goes, "Oh yeah, he heard about her back in the 1960s. He was talking to some divers who were testing some equipment, and they came across what they called a wall of wood.
They ran into it, bad visibility." And so
St. Albans isn't known for good visibility.
These pictures are great. Kelly took these.
Kelly got
on a great day. And there's been good days, bad days. I've only dove on her once, and I didn't. I saw the spud.
Yeah, that's right.
That was fun.
On the site plan, the little protrusion on the left is a spud.
And I sat there
and right next to it, the little rectangular-ish thing. That's actually a foundation to an outhouse.
That's a toilet.
On other photos of work barges, you'll see these sitting there. That's where they that's where they'd go do their duty.
And into the water. Yeah, that's what they did. So a great, solid, heavy, and it's a dredge barge.
Yeah, we found a newspaper article talking about its construction.
Yes, we know when she's built. And she's a dredge. She had a spud, so she's a dredge and a barge all put together, and was towed around by Priscilla. I mean, that's so it's fantastic. And John R. Johnson again, here he is. Okay, what brand this is, or we have no idea. Richardson, don't know, but we call her the Minnow.
Yeah,
we've named her the Minnow.
It resembles Gilligan's Island boat.
Yeah, except for smaller.
And we just use that as verbal shorthand when we refer to it.
Go dive on the Minnow.
Yeah. This must have been at the end of its life when they decided to sink it. It's basically stripped on the inside. The through hull fittings have wooden plugs pounded into them. And in that one photo on the left, halfway down.
Dad. What, Artie? What?
Or maybe he's talking to John.
Okay. Yeah, maybe he's talking to Jack. Yeah, that's where they punched a hole, we think,
Yeah.
in her for her to help her sink.
TV now.
Hi, Jack. How you doing? We can hear you. We can hear you. Hi, Jack. This is Uncle.
Just say hi.
Hi.
Hi, Jack. It's Ann and Chris. How you doing? We'll keep going.
Yeah.
Anyway, fantastic design. The tumble home on this thing is great.
And in the middle left picture, you can see the hole knocked into the side of the boat to the sinker.
Let's go put the TV
And
on.
yeah, we dove down, made a rough site map. And that's
John, go put the TV on for the presidential debate.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Artie, you can turn down your computer if you want to, so we don't hear you. Okay, we'll move on to the next wreck here. Twin motor cabin cruiser wreck, one of the other holy grails because it's on a she's on a trailer.
Yeah, this was known to local divers too. They had
Yeah.
a lot of theories as to how it got on out in the middle of the lake on a trailer.
I know how it happened. When the guy was launching it and he didn't put the plug in.
I like the story that somebody wanted to try an amphibious boat.
It was not driving across the ice. If it
Yeah.
did, if it was driving across the ice, it'd be attached to a vehicle. But it's right out from a launch site. It got loose of its truck or whatever, or they had to unhook it because it was sinking. They must have not put the plug in, or some other part was leaking. Some leaks happened, and it must have floated for a while before it completely filled with water. Because this thing's several hundred feet, or even half a mile, even off of the shoreline. And she sank down onto a hill on her trailer. And so we don't know what brand she is. I'd love to know, but I don't. We can't. I've got pictures of boats that she kind of looks like, but I haven't found anything that is exactly like this wreck. But she's cold molded.
Yeah, that's what that picture on the upper left is
Fantastic.
about.
Yeah, we could see enough of her construction that she's cold molded. So she's got planks that go this way and then planks that go that way.
Very diagonal to each
So
other.
heavy, thick, really well-made boat. All those, steamed
This
planks.
is one of those that had the weird number, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you see that. You can see the it's down here too in the pink, but you can see MN3018AJ. I've got contacts at the Department of Natural Resources in the vehicle and boat division for registration. So if I have questions about these sorts of things, I contact them, and they got back to us. This number was attached to a 1965 Lund fishing boat, aluminum, not this boat. So what that tells us is whoever owned this boat then owned a Lund later on, after this one sank. Maybe then they just bought a Lund, and they moved the number from one boat to the other, which is they're not supposed to do, but they've done it, and we have found it 10 times now on different wrecks. A lot of them.
This instance of reusing the numbers.
Reusing
we found
the
about
numbers.
At least a half a dozen.
Yeah. So this is one of them. So because they've done that, we don't know what her brand or her model, and because she sank before 1972, because the 65 Lund is probably, so we think she sank before 65, but between 1959 and 1972, all of the information from the DNR, when the Department of Conservation became the Department of Natural Resources and moved offices in 1972, they threw all the information away.
Yeah.
All the registration cards for that 13-year period were dumped, like 12-year period, were dumped in the garbage because they didn't want to haul them from one office to the other.
A good example of just because something may have happened relatively recently doesn't mean it's well documented anymore.
That's made our job a lot harder, even for more modern wrecks, because we can't track them as well as we could. Because this number, even if it didn't go to a Lund fishing boat, at least it didn't survive into 1972. We know it sank prior to that. And now with that Lund fishing boat thing, 1965, pretty much figure she sunk in 64, 65. So anyway, on her trailer, and she's just a fantastic wreck site with the twin motors on the back. Those are great motors. Those are 1950s motors. So yeah, she's built in the 40s, late 40s, early 50s.
Well, this was another Holy Grail moment.
Yeah.
We found this boat, and no one's cabin cruiser. They were able to tell that much, and also found that the bow was entirely missing and not anywhere nearby the wreck. So obviously an accident. And remembered coming across a newspaper article in a local paper that talked about this boat accident. So we went back and looked that article up, And in the page, they that talked about the wreck, they also had a picture of
the bow.
of the wreckage that they recovered, and there, lo and behold, there's the bow.
Yeah, and it's a perfect hatch cover for an Owens, that round hatch cover. It's like almost an Owens signature. And there's part of the bow. Whatever detritus they could get, they picked up. That happened on this wreck. We're going to be making a nautical archaeological site this year. We're going to fill out the paperwork to get a number from the state, because she sank 50 years ago this summer. And the story is that she was driving along at night and got clipped by a small runabout. The runabout sank, this boat sank. The 3 people on the runabout drowned. They did die.
There were 4.
Oh, that's right, there's 4.
There were 4 in the
That's
runabout,
right.
3 of them died.
Right.
The 2 people that were in the Owens survived.
He's right. 1 did survive from the runabout, but and the bodies took a couple days to find. Anyway, so that runabout, I did find one article that said they were going to raise the boats, or raise the wrecks, and this one obviously wasn't raised. We don't know if they raised the other one. We're looking for her. We haven't found her yet. No anomaly that we thought might be her has turned out to be her yet. So
One
nice
we did look at with the ROV this year actually turned out to be a huge anchor or rock with a cable around it that we think may have been an anchor for the Minneapolis when they burned her.
Yeah, so it's actually an anchor for part of the Minneapolis site now.
Yeah.
Is up the hill where they anchored her, and that we're going to be filling out a site form update for that site, because that extends the site up the hill, because they're associated together. Yeah. So we're going to make that site a lot bigger.
It's basically a big rock with a cable wrapped around it.
Yeah, so we're hoping that this might be, I was hoping it might be part of the boat that hit the Owens, but it's not. So anyway, we're still looking for her, but just a great story, putting the story to the wreck. We've done that a couple of times, and that's yay. It's good to do. Well, that's all we have for the big boats of Lake Minnetonka and Lake Superior and Mrs. Headwaters, Mississippi River that we've looked at. Diver down flag, we always say, please respect the flag. It's there for a reason, because we can die if you come running over.
Tell your family and friends to respect the dive
Stay
flag.
away. All the flags, if we have 3 flying, all 3 count. 150 feet around each flag belongs to us while we're diving. And do watch out for juvenile northerns. They do bite. I'm the proof. That's my left leg. And if you want our reports, videos, a lot of videos from Kelly, who's watching us today, are there. Links to all of our reports are there. Videos, all sorts of things, all the logbooks from Essex, you can find linked there. And that's all we have. If you have questions, you can either talk or type them in. I'm gonna,
questions or rebuttals.
Because I want to use my the mouse, I'm gonna shrink that. And
Tom just said something.
oh, it'll come back. Okay. What's in this? What bites? Oh, northern
Northern pikes.
Northern pike. We were doing here. I'll go back to that. We were doing a you see down here in the bottom right. We were fixing something on our research boat, Anomaly 51 at the dock, and I was getting little sunfish kind of chewing on my feet. And then I felt this nip on my right foot, my right leg, and I went, "Oh, that's weird," because it was. And then I got a chomp on my left leg, and the northern was going after the little sunfish, but got me instead. And I leapt out of the water. My foot was bleeding, and my leg was bleeding, and I got those very sharp teeth. So, anyway, nice trip down. Oh yeah, Kelly, yeah, you were on all these, just about. You've almost dived all these if we hadn't. You dove most of them. And okay, and Tom, yeah, thank you. Yeah, Tom, I'm glad you showed up. All of ours. Tom left. Yeah, Tom Holden he works up at the Canal Park Museum. So he just left, but he's watched all of our presentations this archaeology month.
You watched all of ours, Kelly.
Be nice. At least Kelly came to something. We've had very few people, but that's okay, because we're going to be putting these up on YouTube. So does anyone have any other questions? We'll answer. I actually got a mouse I can actually work with now. If not, we're going to be signing off. And thanks for joining us tonight. And y'all head out to, thank you. Oh, you too, Lois. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your time and coming in and talking with us. So yeah, you want to watch these again, look them on YouTube. I'll have them put up there soon. Okay, bye.
Thanks for coming by, Artie.
Yeah, bye, Artie. Bye, Jack.
Bye, nephew.
Yeah, and bye, Kelly. See you later. We're going to stop now.